Hey everyone, welcome to Pulling Threads, where we unravel the patterns that keep us stuck and gently weave in the new ones that bring clarity, connection, and peace. I'm your host, Leslie, therapist, coach, and someone who believes that truth is medicine, even when it stings. Today we're going to talk about deception. Not just the big, bold lies, but the subtler betrayals, the omissions, the half-truths, the I didn't tell you because I didn't want to hurt you kind of moments. I think it's safe to say we've all been on both sides of this type of deception. But why is it that even small deceptions can feel so crushing to some of us? Why do they shake our confidence in our friendships and our relationships and even in ourselves? Let's pull the thread and figure out more. Before we get started talking about this from kind of a psychological standpoint, I just want to say, I grew up with a parent who said little white lies, never hurt anyone. And for the most part, that was true, right? I guess that everyone defines little white lies differently, though, and that's where things can get tricky. I want to talk about why, from a psychological standpoint, deception creates a relational rupture. It disrupts the attachment bond that we rely on to feel safe and emotionally anchored in many different types of relationships. So even when it's not malicious, a lie or an omission tells our nervous system, you're not safe here. You can't trust what you see, and maybe even you're alone. But mostly, what you think is happening is not what's really happening. And that lands deeply in our bodies. Okay? Let me give you some other examples. Let's say a partner deletes a text message from an ex. The other partner finds out later, and while nothing happened, the secrecy makes you question what else is being hidden. That's a very normal response to that situation. Let's say your spouse tells you that they're just working late, but then you discover that they're grabbing drinks with a big group of people, and someone that they once had feelings for is in that group. Even if nothing happened, the dishonesty violates emotional trust. Let's say someone buys something really big, a car, a trip, an investment, and they don't tell their partner because it's just easier not to tell them, and they know that the partner's going to push back. Well, that may erode financial transparency and mutual respect with one another. Or even smaller things like saying, I'm fine when you're not, or pretending to agree with something just to avoid conflict. That all builds distance and creates distrust. The brain doesn't weigh how big the lie was. This is important. It tracks whether the environment is safe and it's consistent. And when deception enters, trust takes a hit, regardless of the scale. It does not matter if it's a little white lie or a huge, huge omission or a huge lie. So why do deceptions, even though they're small, feel huge? Well, even tiny deceptions can cause betrayal trauma. And if you don't know what betrayal trauma is, you can read more about it. It's a concept that was developed by Dr. Jennifer Freyd, and it really explains what happens in our body and in our emotions when we are betrayed. So, especially in intimate relationships, we really expect truth and openness and honesty. We don't expect perfection, but we expect truth. So when that's withheld, we don't just question what was hidden. We don't just question what was omitted. We start questioning our entire sense of reality. Your body and your brain are trying to sort this out, what is happening? And you might ask things like, was I wrong to trust? Did I miss the signs? Am I naive? And those are really, really common questions. But they don't just shake the foundation of this one topic. They can shake the foundation of the whole relationship. If you believe you've been naive, you will question everything. You might question, does the person have feelings for someone else? Is the person spending time with someone else? Are they lying about where they're going? Are they using me for something? Like, one little omission or one discovery of deception can lead to a host of questions that are unnecessary but common and expected if you understand the trauma behind the deception. Because the pain isn't just about the lie. It's about self-doubt. It's about emotional instability and the disintegration of a shared reality, meaning what I thought was happening was not actually happening, and you didn't share with me what was really happening. So we weren't on the same page, and what I thought was reality was not true. That can really shake a person to their core. This has to do with trauma, attachment, and sometimes even echoes of past betrayal. So some of us are more deeply impacted by deception because of our past wounds. If you grew up in a home with inconsistency, manipulation, dishonesty, lying, cheating, whatever it was, you likely developed some protective adaptations. Maybe you're hypervigilant. Maybe you're a people pleaser. Maybe you have a difficult time trusting. These are all very common for people who grew up with parents that weren't honest, or if there was some kind of major deception that happened when you were growing up. So when a new deception shows up, it doesn't land on a clean slate, right? It lands on scar tissue of every time your trust was broken before. That's why one moment can feel so disproportionately devastating and maybe confusing for your partner to grasp why it's so devastating. If you were ever gaslit, lied to as a child, made to question your intuition, a betrayal in adulthood might trigger a flood of dysregulation. This is trauma. It is not drama. You are not being too much. And it deserves an immense amount of compassion from your partner on yourself. So I think the message there is the way that you react to deception may be partially out of your control, but it also may be something that when you have a strong reaction, it's a really great time to ask yourself, why? What old wounds are making this one so painful? And are those things that we need to work on, that you need to work on in therapy, journaling, releasing old stored up emotions? What is it? Now let's talk about why people deceive and what it actually means, because we tell ourselves stories about the deception that can make the situation seem much worse than it is. So let's get curious. Like, why do people deceive? Most often, it's not because someone is inherently bad or malicious. It's because they're afraid of the consequence. They're unsure how to handle confrontation in general and may avoid confrontation. Maybe they're trying to protect an image or avoid shame, but they're operating from some type of avoidant behavior or attachment style, possibly, or maybe they're anxious and they just can't deal with bringing whatever this is to light because it'll be too much. This doesn't excuse the deception, but understanding the why really can help us determine whether repair is possible. Is there a possibility of mending this and making it better and working through it? Because that's not always the case. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. So let's also talk about what deception makes us believe about ourselves, okay? It doesn't just break our trust. It can break our identity. It can break the identity of the relationship and what we thought was solid foundation that we're on. When someone hides something from us, we often internalize the rupture. We sometimes think, I must not be worthy of honesty or worth honesty. I'm not smart enough to see through people. I'm too much, or I'm too sensitive. This always happens to me. Maybe I'm attracting this. Why am I calling this in? Why is this happening to me? Why does this always happen to me? These beliefs can erode our self-worth. It can lead to fawning, over-explaining, emotionally withdrawing, or becoming hyper-independent. For example, let's say a woman finds out that her partner was emotionally confiding in someone else. Instead of blaming him, she may blame herself. I must have been too needy. No wonder he couldn't talk to me. He couldn't trust me with this. Or let's say a man discovers his wife was hiding financial decisions. And instead of asking for clarity from his wife, what's going on, he just shuts down and says, I shouldn't have trusted anyone in the first place. And he removes himself from the relationship. This is how unprocessed betrayal becomes a silent blueprint for our next relationship and or keeps us stuck in a relationship pattern where there's lots of deception. So that's why it's important to understand the impact on you and the why of the other person. So how can couples heal from deception? Or friends? Friends could now also be deceiving. Healing is possible, but only if both people or all people are willing to face the truth and not just apologize. So that might include like taking full compassionate accountability. And regardless of whether you think the person is overreacting or not, the person who deceived must name exactly what they did and why without being defensive. No explanation. This goes down to intention versus impact. Maybe your intention was to protect the other person, but the impact is that now they don't trust you. You need to deal with the impact because that's the most important thing, right? If you come in defensive and you come in and say, I knew you would overreact. I knew you would threaten to leave. That's why I didn't tell you. That part doesn't matter when you're trying to make this better. And that's not taking accountability. Taking out accountability is not saying, I didn't want to hurt you, but saying, I chose not to tell you because I was afraid. And now I can see that fear hurt you deeply, and I'm sorry. I should not have done this. I should have trusted you. Next, transparency moving forward is really important. This doesn't mean surveillance or forced control of the other person or tracking them, but some kind of mutual agreement about what honesty and emotional safety look like in this relationship. Some people like to use repair rituals. This could be couples therapy, weekly check-ins, or co-creating like a truth contract that both partners commit to. Trauma-informed couples therapy can be really helpful because a skilled therapist can really help both partners like track down the triggers, name the needs of both people, and rebuild nervous system trust, and help the partner who felt the need to lie to understand themselves and why. Right? They need embodied trust in one another. Like relearning how to tell the truth is a skill that sometimes needs to be retaught. If a person avoided honesty to protect others their whole life, it's going to take rewiring to speak with love, clarity, and honesty. So if someone is willing, both people are willing to do the work, can absolutely repair and move forward and have a stronger relationship for it. But there are some times when the rupture can't be repaired. And sometimes the breach is just too wide. One person might refuse accountability, the defensiveness might take over, or the pattern might repeat itself over and over again. Or the other person just might say, I don't want to forgive you. In those cases, healing might require like letting go. So not because the relationship wasn't meaningful, but because it can't sustain the kind of truth that the nervous system needs to thrive. So in those cases, I would definitely recommend individual therapy for the person betrayed to process the betrayal and to rewire those trauma responses that that person has. Maybe some group support, like especially for women healing from betrayal trauma, shared stories can really create safety and reduce shame. Somatic work is great, releasing the stored grief and rebuilding like a body-based trust. And if this relationship isn't going to work out, I highly recommend that before moving into another relationship. Also, boundaries coaching or divorce recovery support to untangle the layers of identity that are tied to that relationship. Other things, spiritual practices and rituals. I love Reiki to help release. I love a good tea ceremony to just meditate and be inspired by others who are there to find clarity, cleansing, and letting go. So those are just a few examples of ways, specifically in the divorce groups that I work with, we do a lot of this because there's a lot of, like, sometimes years of betrayal that people are working through. And so listening to other stories, what worked for other people, what other people have been through and survived and now they're on the other side of, can all be really helpful. It really does help my clients reduce their shame to be in a group of women who are all going through something very similar. And I think for the person in the relationship, if it ended, that has an issue with lying because of the way that they grew up and it makes them feel more safe to lie, I would say individual therapy as well. And maybe some internal family systems, IFS therapy, EMDR, maybe tracking back to those early times in life where it only felt safe to lie, or there was an erratic parent. Like, there are just so many reasons that this shows up for people. So working with a therapist can really help, because sometimes I think that there are a lot of people who don't want to lie, but they just don't know any other way. It's almost a reflex for them. So I recommend for those people working with a therapist as well. Because deception in a relationship is never just about the lie. It's about what it represents. Fear, control, maybe disconnection. And what it destroys is the safety between two people. But the truth and intention and support offered in some of these ways make healing possible, whether it's inside the relationship or beyond it. I see healing every day in women who are leaving their marriage, and it's frankly incredible to see it. And seeing people work through and understand why the deception had such a massive impact on them, and understanding that they are worthy and that it many, almost every time had nothing to do with them. It had nothing to do with them, but it sure felt like it in the moment. So if you've been navigating the aftermath of deception, I see you. Your grief is valid, your healing is possible, and you are certainly not alone. Thank you for joining me on Pulling Threads. If this episode resonated, please share it and subscribe for more conversations that untangle what hurts and gently weave in what heals. Until next time, be honest, be brave, and keep pulling the threads. Thank you.